Hello, this is Roman Gabriel, and you are listening to The Grilling Truth.
Welcome, everybody, to Survive and Advance on the Grilling Truth Sports Network. Survive and Advance is brought to you by Replenishing Care Technologies, the future of sports medicine. To find out more about them, go to thegruelingtruth.net, click the banner at the top of the page. I'm your co-host for Survive and Advance, Mike Goodpaster. Right now, I want to welcome in my co-host, a member of the Indiana Basketball Hall of Fame, Steve Risley. How you doing, Steve?
Morning, Mike. How you doing this morning?
All right, and now with the NBA, starting to open camps, we've actually got another sport to talk about now. And today we're going to discuss the biggest questions going into the preseason 2018-19 NBA season. And we're going to start off with the Boston Celtics. I think this is a really interesting team, Steve, that when you look at it, last year they had a great year, even though they lost Gordon Hayward. They had a lot of injuries, actually. And I think the biggest question here is, how do these guys fit together when they're all healthy?
Yeah, that's definitely a coaching challenge, or either a coaching challenge or a coaching opportunity for the Celtics right now. What to do with all these guys, because they were cranking along at a pretty good pace with just Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown kind of running things, and then Kyrie Irving and Gordon Hayward kind of being out of the picture, and they were doing fine. Now you're going to bring in two guys that kind of covet the basketball. And are they going to be able to blend those guys all in and keep everybody happy? Kyrie is kind of a guy that kind of wants the ball in his hands a lot. Gordon tends to score his points a little bit more quiet, but do Tatum and Brown want to walk away quietly and relinquish the roles that they played last year, which were pretty much offensive leaders of this basketball club and, all around leaders of this club? I don't know. What are you thinking?
I think this. I think it could be a problem for most teams, but when you got Brad Stevens coaching this team, I'll take Brad Stevens over Greg Popovich even as the best coach in the NBA. And I think if there's anybody that can balance 5 stars or pseudo-stars, it'll take some time to achieve it, but I think Brad Stevens is the guy to do it. And this is the one team that I think really top to bottom, when you look at them, they match the Warriors for talent, and they may even be deeper when you go to the bench.
Yeah, I agree to some degree, but I don't know. The thing with the Celtics is you got guys that are competing for a lot of the same type of things. Haywood and Tatum kind of do the exact same thing. So when you get them both on the court, are they going to be trying to take each other's ball away from them or minutes away from them? Driving lanes with Brown and with the Kyrie Irving, that both of them are penetrators. It's going to be interesting to see how they fit in.
Yeah, but the one thing, we did do a show about this, whether coaching really matters in the NBA. And I think when you got a guy like Brad Stevens, it does. I think for most NBA teams, it doesn't. But I just think Stevens is a special coach that's going to be successful no matter where he goes. And I think this has to make them the favorite going into the East.
Oh, there's no doubt I think they're the favorite. I think that the East is theirs to lose. I think they jumped ahead of Philadelphia, which we would probably consider to be the second best team in the East. I know the Pacers are up and coming, but I still think the Pacers are a couple of good players away from contending with Boston and Philadelphia. Toronto becomes the enigma. What happens with them? But, yeah, I think clearly the Celtics are. I think if any team and any coach combination is going to be able to mesh these guys all together to form a high-performing team, it's going to be Brad Stevens and the Celtics. So it's just going to be interesting to watch the dynamics. The only real one that concerns me a little bit is Kyrie Irving, because he has kind of a history of not being happy if he doesn't have the ball a lot. Other than that, I think all the other players are going to get along fine. So it'll just be interesting to see what happens with Kyrie Irving early in the season, if he's getting his minutes and getting his production.
Yeah, and I think when we switch to the West, of course, the Golden State Warriors are loaded, and they got more loaded in the offseason with DeMarcus Cousins. And I think the one thing there is it'll keep teams from trying to go small to match the three-point shooters of the Warriors, because Cousins is a big man, and there's not too many of them anymore. And when you've got a center with all that perimeter talent around you, this makes this a really dangerous team if Cousins can fit in. And the one good thing there is I think Steve Kerr has proven that he's a good basketball coach.
Well, I think it makes them more dangerous than they have been before. I still think they're the most dangerous team in the NBA. But, you know, at some point, the too many chefs in the kitchen spoil the broth. Are they going to get too talented? They're just not going to have enough playing time for everybody. And then you start getting some dissension amongst the players on the team. They get stronger and stronger and stronger. But you only put 5 guys on the floor at any given time. And you turn around and you got a lot of good talent sitting on the bench, not getting the minutes they want to. Does it wreak havoc on the chemistry of the basketball team?
Yeah, and I think the good thing about them is they got Jordan Bell, who's a capable starter, because Cousins has had injury problems. But when you look at them, it's kind of the same problem the Rockets, or not the Rockets, but the Celtics have, is can they fit the pieces together? But I'll also say this, a team that's been to that many NBA Finals and won that many World Championships, it's going to be a lot easier to get guys to just kind of relax and do what they're told if they think that at the end they're going to be able to get a ring.
Yeah, you say that, and that may hold true to college, but NBA is a little different cat, isn't it, Mike? I mean, you know, a lot of these guys are playing for money.
Yeah, it is.
They're playing for individual endorsement.
Because if you're DeMarcus Cousins and you just get along here, he's only making, I think, $5 or $6 million this year. If he just gets along, plays out his role, shows everybody he's healthy, at the end of this year in free agency, he can make a ton of money, and he can do it with already having a ring on his finger.
I get it. You know, Cousins is going to have to make some accommodations. I mean, he's going to have to, you know, take his role, which is going to be a little bit downgraded from what he's accustomed to. So, yeah, it all becomes a personality game. And I think at some point in time you get too much talent on a basketball team in the NBA where Stevens is one of the few geniuses out there that can actually build a high-performing team, not a team of high performers. I mean, I'm almost getting ready to turn the Golden State Warriors into a team of high performers, which in my book, there's a big difference between being a high-performing team and being a team of high performers. I think the Celtics still are in that mold of being built toward a high-performing team. I don't think their talent base is nearly as broad or as deep as Golden State. And I think they're going to be able to blend a lot easier. But Golden State now, you know, you go 6, 7, 8, 9 guys deep, you got potential all-NBA players that deep onto that roster now. And just as Kerr going to be able to keep everybody happy and keep the chemistry and get everybody enough minutes to where they don't want to be halfway through the season going, I want out, I want to leave, and then you got dissension in the locker room. You got players not playing hard or playing for themselves, trying to build staff to make a trade deadline or something of that nature. Not likely, because Kerr is a great coach and this is a great organization. And you're right, they've won enough championships to prove time over time that they'll be able to come to that. But I think they've got more talent now than they've ever had before, and they're almost getting too rich.
I don't know if you can ever be too rich, but.
Well, you know, you can't financially, I don't think. You know, I believe you can't financially, but I think talent-wise, I definitely think you can be too rich. I think that you can definitely have too much, especially in an NBA team where you only put 5 guys on the floor. And injuries aren't quite as prevalent as they are, say, in the NFL. Like let's take a look at, you know, this is an example of the Philadelphia Eagles with Foles and with Wentz. They can't be too rich. You can never be too rich at quarterback. You can never have enough good quarterbacks. But the NBA is a little different. These guys are a little bit more durable. They do go down, but not quite as frequently. And they do base their livelihood based on most of them all, their contracts are designed for individual production more than team production. So I'm not saying it's going to be a fail in any way. You know, I still think the Golden State Warriors are the team to beat in the NBA, but it's just going to be, it's a little different dynamic than what we've seen the last 3 or 4 years with having this overabundance of talent on their team now.
Well, I think they've always had an overabundance, and there is a risk with Cousins just because there's always a chance he could bog down the style that they play. But I mean, you're looking at this. This either doesn't work, and I say that they don't even play him and they get rid of his butt, or it works, and then you do have a team that you can start comparing to the Celtics and Lakers of the 80s because there is an inside presence then. That brings us to last year. Their biggest challenger was the Houston Rockets, who pushed the Warriors to 7 games, and if Chris Paul doesn't get hurt, who knows who wins that game. Now, Chris Paul is still one of the best point guards in the NBA, but let's face it, as he gets older, nobody beats Father Time. So I don't think his year that he has this year is going to be as good as last year. It may not be a huge drop-off, just a little bit. Reigning MVP James Harden, I mean, he may never have a season as good as the one he just had. And then to complicate matters, as you talked about high-performing teams, Houston also faces the challenge of losing 2 of its most important role players in Trevor Ariza and Luke Mbamute, or whatever the hell his name is. That's why we need to keep Americans in the NBA, because I can pronounce their names better than that.
But like Gordon Hayward?
Yeah, Gordon Haywood. That's easy. Chris Paul.
Or even Paul
Curry.
George.
Yeah, Paul George. Yeah, let's keep it to that. It's like when I do the boxing show. We always get those Russians' names, and it's like, I just don't want to say it. Sometimes I won't even talk about them just because I don't want to be embarrassed that I can't say their names. But when you look at the candidates to supplant those two, you've got either inconsistent Gerald Green, unproven James Ennis, or you got a guy like Carmelo Anthony. I don't see how this team is going to improve, and I think this is a team that drops down somewhere between 3rd and 6th in the West.
I agree. They almost went the exact opposite direction of Golden State. I think they were pretty even last year. You're right. Without Chris Paul getting hurt, that series could have easily gone the other way. But I think that while on paper it appears that Golden State's taken 2 steps forward, it appears that the Houston Rockets may have taken 1 step backwards. Plus, guys like Chris Paul, and they're getting older. They had a great year and still wants to play the game at a high level, but still age starts to become a factor. And they haven't replenished with a lot of young talent yet. And Carmelo Anthony is a crapshoot any way you slice it. I don't know if he's going to be good for that team or not, but we'll see. But, yeah, I agree with you in the sense that Houston gets down on a plane that's a little bit below where they were this past season, and I don't think that they'll be as rambunctiously contending as they were last year to do battle with the with Golden State Warriors.
All right, then we go back to the East. We'll talk a little bit about the Indiana Pacers, a team that's near and dear to our hearts as we're Hoosiers. I think they had to be probably the surprise team of last year, winning 48 games. They played at a little different style than most NBA teams do. They added a couple players like McDermott in the offseason. But I think for this team to get better, I think it's all going to come down to 2 guys, and that's Miles Turner and Sabonis. Because I think those are the 2 guys that have tremendous upside. And for this team to get better, at least one, if not both of them, have to discover that upside this year.
Yeah, I put more pressure on Miles Turner. He's been the more inconsistent of the 2 players. Sabonis, I think, given the ball and getting in the right position, I think will be a really good, strong front court player for the Pacers. But Miles Turner, he's just all over the place. Some days he looks all world, all NBA. Some days you don't even know that he's on the court. I really think at this point the Pacers are about as good as they're going to be, given the roster that they've got right now. I saw that they re-signed T.J. Leaf, who really is a non-entity and a non-factor. They brought back a couple of the guys that really didn't get a lot of playing time. They re-signed them. I don't know if the Pacers have done much in the offseason to strengthen their program, strengthen their team. They're relying pretty much on the success they had last year. I think people are going to figure Oladipo out a little bit more. I think he was a sneaky little surprise and had a great season. But I think there'll be more defenses keying on him. And I don't know if the Pacers have anybody else that can step up. I don't know that I have a lot of faith in their coach. Really, I think that they rode Oladipo's coattails throughout the year, and when he played well, it was evident against Cleveland. When he played well, they beat Cleveland. When he didn't play well, Cleveland crushed him. And I think that still bodes for the Pacers still being pretty much a one-dimensional consistent team. They need another scoring punch out of him. Somebody else out on the Pacers roster is going to put up 15 to 20 points a game to offset Oladipo's 25 to 26, 27 points a game, or they're going to be above 500, and they'll be a team that will win big games. But I don't think they'll be able to contend with Philadelphia, Toronto, or Boston in the East. They'll still be a notch below them.
All right, we're going to bounce back to the West. We're going to go to the LeBron James Lakers. I don't think they're the Los Angeles Lakers anymore. I think they're the LBJ Lakers. And when you look at this, Marcus Washington, who writes for thegruelingtruth.net, wrote an article yesterday of how they'd missed the playoffs. And I looked at the roster. I think he's nuts because of this. When you compare the roster that LeBron has right now in L.A. to Cleveland, I know they're playing in the West, which is a tougher conference, but I think he's got a team with more pieces and younger, more dynamic, more athletic. So I think this is a playoff team. The question is, how deep can they go in the playoffs?
I think this is a playoffs that comes down to the Lakers and the Warriors. Now, I think the Warriors are going to be far superior, but I think Lakers with LeBron have stepped up above Houston. And I may be going on a limb there, and I may be catching some crap from people, but I think the Lakers were a team last year that really had no direction. Luke Walton is kind of like a lame duck coach. I don't think that he does a lot for that program. Heck, I think it took him a month before he even met LeBron after LeBron had signed with the Lakers. Magic is running that team, but doesn't want to give the appearance that he's running the team. He wants to give the appearance that Luke Walton's running the team, in my opinion. And I think that LeBron becomes the catalyst that fixes all of that. I think inherently the Lakers are a very talented young basketball team. They've got good. They're all young, but they're also eager, and they have the capability, in my eyes, to be molded around something similar to the Celtics. Now, whether they have the coaching, which they don't have the coaching that the Celtics do, but I think they're young, impressionable players, and a lot's going to step up and see what LeBron's mentality is. Why is LeBron in L.A.? Is LeBron out in L.A. to make movies and be in movie production and to be in television and entertainment? Is LeBron in L.A. to win an NBA championship, or is LeBron in a way to just be LeBron and glean a whole lot more money and do it in Tinseltown where it's warm instead of Cleveland where it's cold? That's what we don't know. But I think LeBron has a tremendous opportunity here to get these kids to all come together and play, let these kids rally around LeBron, realize that LeBron is the star of this team, and follow him and take the direction that he offers. And I think that LeBron will still get the favoritism of the NBA that he's gotten in Cleveland for so long. I do believe that the NBA would love to see the Lakers back in contention, playing in the playoffs, playing at a high level in the playoffs, making the final. LA is the second biggest TV market in the United States. So I think there's a lot going for it. And I see the Lakers surprising people. I think that LeBron's the one player in the league that can handle 1-on-3. He's proven it time and time again. You can't shut him down. And I think he's got a good supporting cast. And I like in the end, somehow I think you end up seeing Lakers and Golden State playing for the West. What are your thoughts on that? Blow me out of the water.
I think that's a little much right. I'll tell you, the team that would scare me is the New Orleans Pelicans. And the reason I say that is when they lost to Marcus Cousins last year to injury, it freed up Anthony Davis. It spread the floor around him. They used that to upset the Portland Trail Blazers in the playoffs. And I think if the Pelicans can get anything from the wing, I think just the fact that they have one of the few true centers left in the NFL or NBA and Anthony Davis makes New Orleans a little bit of a threat. What do you think about the Pelicans?
I think I don't think they've paid their dues enough yet. I think they're a year or two away from gelling into a playoff contending team. I think they're talented. They've got a fair amount of talent, and they're an up-and-coming team for sure. They're kind of like the Pacers. They're still maybe one or two players short of getting to where they need to get. Cousins remains to be seen, whether that was a good thing to lose him or a bad thing. Like I said, they accelerated their play when he went down with injury, so it all looks good. But I say that they're going to be probably provide as much out in the West as the Pacers provide in the East. It's kind of that dangerous team you got to play all the time, but it's going to step on itself enough times that it'll be in the playoffs, but will probably get put out in the semifinals or early, still a year or two away or a player or two away from being able to really get up and contend with the big boys.
Yeah, and I think the other team in the East that really, I think, could challenge the Boston Celtics are the Philadelphia 76ers. And I think a lot of that has to do with keeping Markelle Fultz healthy. When you look at this team with Ben Simons, guys like that, this is a talented enough team to challenge Boston.
Very much so. I think they're every bit as talented as Boston. I just don't think they have the coaching. I think Stevens will outcoach their coach every game. I don't think that they know what to do with their talent as well as what Stevens in Boston knows to do with their talent. And I think that's what it's going to come down to, because the Sixers are strong, and on any other given year, you would say that they would be the team to beat in the East, but I don't think they're going to be able to get by Boston consistently enough or the 7-game series. I think they'll still fall short. I think they'll get out coached, and I think their players will be the Celtics players will be more ready to play. And I still think Philadelphia is still one of the youngest teams in the NBA, and still have a year or two of seasoning to go. So they're going to challenge. They're going to be Boston's biggest threat in the East, I believe. But I still don't think that they can get past the Celtics if the Celtics stay healthy.
Yeah, and the team that I think surprises me the most in all of this would be the Portland Trail Blazers. They're a team that every year the last few years with C.J. McCollum and Damian Lillard have been in the playoffs. And they get upset in the first round, a sweep by the Pelicans last year. And you would think that would make them do at least some modest restructuring of the roster. And instead, they're going to return with pretty much the same team that they had last year.
Yeah, and they're also going to probably finish about the same place they finished last year. I just don't think they're in enough of a situation where they can deal with Golden State, or really even I don't think the Lakers or Houston. I think you'll see them falling a little bit below them. And now you've got them pretty much on a plane, like you said, with the Pelicans. So I think they're a surprise, winning 49 games in the league last year and really doing it pretty much all under the radar screen. But I think when it comes to playoff time and games really start to matter night in and night out, I don't think they're at the caliber of the other teams out west. And they didn't do a lot to improve their team this year. Like you said, they're coming back with a lot of the same type of players, same guys, same roster, not a lot of changes. So I just see them as being kind of a Pelicans-Pacers type thing, Toronto type thing, where one of those second-tier teams in each of the conferences, the West or the East, that's going to make noise, going to be in the playoffs solidly, but not going to probably get past the second round.
All right, then we go to the San Antonio Spurs, who definitely, we are into fully the post-Duncan era, as Manu Ginobili retired this past offseason. So now you've got a new guy for Toronto, DeMar DeRozan, and you got LaMarcus Aldridge. I think the question there is, how do these two guys fit together for Coach Popovich?
Yeah, we don't know. I mean, I think that they're going to just continue to drop down a little bit. I mean, they're going to get into a rebuilding mode here, where they're going to have to rebuild and retool the entire team if they want to get back to the dominance that they've had in the 90s and early 2000s when they were winning everything with Duncan and Robinson and those guys. So I don't see a lot coming out of that basketball team. They've lost a lot of their talent to retirement and old age. Popovich, how much is his heart into it anymore? Does he have the same veracity to coach as he did? I know he went through some personal issues last year, losing his wife and whatnot. And how much does he really have the energy to continue to rebuild this team and build? He's still a great coach, there's no doubt. I'd like to see, it'd almost be fun to see Popovich go to the Lakers and coach the Lakers this year and see what he could do with a team
LeBron
that's ready.
coaches
I
the
think.
Lakers. Why would they need a coach?
Yeah, I know. But LeBron, Popovich may be the one guy LeBron would let him help coach the Lakers.
he'd let Popovich be his new assistant coach, is what you're saying.
He's let Popovich be the assistant coach. Yeah, he'd let him hold the clipboard in the timeouts. But I don't see San Antonio as being a threat. Middle of the pack team.
All right, next up, we're going to talk Toronto Raptors, which is a team that is usually one of the best teams in the NBA until we get to the playoffs. They replaced DeMar DeRozan with Kawhi Leonard. And if you look at it, Kawhi Leonard is a better player. He adds a level of three-point shooting and defense that the Raptors have missed on the wing during DeRozan's tenure. But the question is this. Is he going to be engaged, and how bad does he want to play this year? Or is he just going to kind of coast through the season and go to free agency and join LeBron?
Well, he's made no bones about it. He was not happy. He did not end up in L.A., and he's talked about being discontent about being traded to Toronto. So I think he's a one-year deal there, and I don't know that he's going to give the commitment to the team to win. I don't understand what their mentality was when you're producing the best record in the conference. You get rid of your coach, and I understand they're not winning in the playoffs, and that's the reason why ultimately. But you get rid of one of your most beloved players and your coach, and you pretty much change the entire personality and culture of that basketball team. Not only do that, but you bring in what is deemed really to be a malcontent or a troublemaker into the franchise. So I think that they fall and become not much of a factor next year at all. I think Leonard will just be almost like a cancer. He'll want out. He'll probably not play a lot. Look for him to feign an injury somewhere down the road, unless he's trying to impress somebody to getting somebody else to sign him. And it wouldn't surprise me if I don't know if a trade deadline comes up, he's not on the trading block at some point by midseason anyway.
All right, another team in the West that I think could challenge, and there's a lot of questions here, but the Utah Jazz. I mean, last year they started off the season 19-28. They had lost Gordon Hayward in the offseason. It appeared that everything was unraveling, that the team had spent years developing. And then they don't lose again until after the All-Star break. They win 29 of their last 35 to slide into the playoffs, where they beat the favored Oklahoma City Thunder in 6 games. Is Utah for real? I mean, they got Rudy Gobert. They've got a good roster. They've got a solid coach. Guys like Devin Mitchell, who I think's made major strides during the course of last year. How big of a threat do you think the Utah Jazz are?
Well, I think they're an up-and-coming threat. I mean, so they got Gobert. Jay Crowder came in and didn't join the team until late February, and he changed things up for them a little bit. And I think they built and they progressed as the season went on. You said they started off poorly, but they're a team that improved. And a lot of times teams will stall out, or they'll start to have slumps after the All-Star break, or except the teams making a run for the playoffs. Everybody else will start to look to how they're going to improve the team next year. But Utah came forward the whole second half of the season. I think they move up and they strengthen the whole West Conference. They are no longer a doormat team. They're a team that's got to be played hard. I know I went to a Clippers game last year, and they dismantled the Clippers late in the season, which isn't saying a lot with the Clippers. But they played good, solid team ball. They played the same kind of ball, branded ball that Boston was playing. It seems that there's a movement. Stevens has created a movement to get back to that 80s team ball that the Celtics and the Lakers became so good at playing to win multiple championships with. And I see Utah fitting that mold. I still think they're a couple of years or a year away, a couple of players away. But if they continue to improve as they did the second half of the season, you're going to have to deal with them, and they're going to upset some people and maybe move up in a lineup or move up in a playoff situation that creates different playoff scenarios for more popular teams or more highly regarded teams in the West Conference.
All right, and I had to bring this up before we wrap it up, but J.R. Smith, did you see him address his Game 1 of the NBA Finals screw-up where he ran the clock out, basically?
No, I don't know. Did this happen recently or a long time ago?
Yeah, he addressed it yesterday, and this is the exact quote.
Okay.
I'm not making this up, and he went to college. Talk to my coaches. everybody stood behind me 100%. The main thing was, okay, granted, you didn't shoot the ball, but what if you ain't get that rebound? Then what? We still would have been in the same situation. I could have shot and missed, then what? I mean,
okay.
You really got to ask yourself, what if he ain't get that rebound? I mean, where did J.R. Smith go to college, number one? And number two...
Did he go to North Carolina with McCants? With Sal McCants, maybe?
God.
Plantation education?
If he ain't get that rebound, I mean, bad things could have happened, Steve.
That's a classic case of deflection, isn't it?
I'm not really sure. That's a classic case of the failure of the American public school system, I think.
Oh, yeah. Better not go down that.
If he ain't get that rebound, though, bad things could have happened.
Yeah.
Oh, man, he went to St. Benedict's preparatory school.
Oh, he went to a prep school.
He went to a prep school. I hope the tuition's not real high there.
What is a prep school?
A prep school is where after you get out of college or high school, if you need, it's kind of like a finishing school. If you have trouble with some classwork, they'll come prepare you for college, and he obviously needed that help.
So you go to prep school after high school?
Yeah, you go to prep school for a year.
And is there a prep school league, or does prep school teams get to play high school teams?
Actually, prep school teams will play anything from JV junior college teams to high school teams. But usually high school teams. And it doesn't
That's interesting.
It doesn't look here like he went to college. So he went straight from St. Benedict's preparatory school, where he'd be learning some education, and then he went to the NBA.
Maybe he should have stopped at North Carolina for a year.
Maybe he should have, but
yeah,
he ain't get no good education, I don't think. But and I don't mean to make fun of him, but I do, because come on.
But you are.
Yeah, I mean, give me a break. That's just think if I ain't get that rebound, and then what if he'd have missed a shot? If he'd have missed a shot, then at least people wouldn't be saying, he had no clue what was going on.
Yeah. Okay. Who are the surprise players for this year in the NBA? Who are you seeing as a surprise player? Players are going to come up. Who's going to do well? You think Kyrie's going to fit in and play well at Boston? Or is he going to be the lone individual type player?
I don't know. He didn't fit in well with LeBron because he wanted out of there. So the question has to be asked with all the talent there. I mean, will he get along? I mean, Gordon Hayward, you would think, would be able to assimilate with everybody else.
Sure.
I have no reason to think Kyrie wouldn't, except for what happened with him and LeBron.
Yeah, and didn't Kyrie, wasn't there some playoff games last year that Kyrie did not show up to? Am I imagining that, or were there some playoff games where he did not come to the game or was not behind the bench or something of that nature?
I don't even remember.
Yeah, I don't remember either. I thought there was some rebuttal about him. Yeah.
I think Trae Young could have a breakout season. I like Trae Young. I know a lot of people don't. I mean, I just don't know if he's enough team for that to matter.
Yeah, I wasn't too high on Trae Young. I thought he was a little too individualistic of a player, but maybe sometimes, that needs to happen.
Well, and I think, of course, TJ Leaf has to be brought up when you're talking about breakout players. TJ Leaf, I guess draft best athlete available. I don't even remember him being the best athlete available. But
the Pacers drafted him, 19th or 20th? But then the Pacers got to sing for UCLA players anyway.
Yeah, and I think a guy like Miles Turner could.
Yeah, Miles Turner is definitely a player that could. What's Miles in his fourth or fifth year now?
I think so.
It's about time for him. It's about time for him to break out and start putting 10 to 15 points. He's the player that can change the Pacers to being a threat to possibly get into the finals of the NBA playoffs.
Yeah, because if Sabonis was to really kick it in, then I think that they do. I think
they do, yeah.
Yeah. I think another guy is Chris Middleton with the Milwaukee Bucks. I think he's the guy that's about to break out. I think that Bucks team is a team we didn't talk about, but they got a lot of players on that team that are really good. I think Nikola Jokic, the center with the Denver Nuggets, anytime you get a nickname of the Unicorn, you could be a really good player. Devin Booker with the Suns.
Yeah, Denver's got Gary Harris, too, who's starting to come in. I think he was averaging 15 to 20 points a game, pretty close to that last year, wasn't he?
Yeah, and I'll tell you the one that I think is really big here, and the LA Lakers are going to really regret sending D'Angelo Russell to the Nets in the summer of 2017 to make space for Lonzo Ball. I think the Lakers are going to find out that was a huge mistake. Russell only played 12 games last year because he got hurt, but I think he's going to have a great season this year. Aaron Gordon's another guy. I think he proved last season he's more than just a great dunker. He's an all-around star. He'll do great things with the Orlando Magic. None of us will realize it because the Magic are going to get their brains beat in every game. But
right, yeah.
Those are my guys that I think are going to be breakout players this year.
Yeah, the dynamic between Ball and LeBron is going to be interesting to watch.
Yeah,
and we're going to see how much LeBron puts up with Lonzo's dad.
I don't think it's going to be much.
I don't think it's going to be much at all either. I think it's going to be real quiet.
I would say there's probably a good chance that they've already had a discussion.
Yeah, I would bet that Lonzo and the Lakers organization and LeBron have had that discussion, and whether they brought in his dad, LeVar, into it or not, who knows. But I think he's going to get the message real quick that he needs to, if he doesn't want to see his son not play in Memphis or Orlando, that he ought to probably just back off and let the Lakers do their thing, let Magic and the Laker organization do their thing. So, but...
Well, it should be an interesting season, and we will follow it all year long on Survive and Advance as we get into training camp. We'll occasionally have some shows about it. Tomorrow, Steve, we have what I think is an interesting topic. Do you want to explain to everybody what we're going to discuss tomorrow?
Tomorrow we're going to discuss the report that Real Sports did on HBO with Bryant Gumbel, if you ever watched that. They did a pretty interesting piece on the deaths that have been occurring in the training and conditioning part of college football. There's been over 30 deaths within the last 14 years, averaging over 2 deaths a year. And most of all this is occurring in conditioning and training. And the lack of oversight by the NCAA, go figure, lack of oversight by the NCAA. Why are we talking about that again? Oh, I know why we are, because it doesn't involve signing a contract to rake in more money or have another corporate sponsor at your event or to sell a bigger venue to get more seats to sell or a bigger TV contract. That's why we're talking about lack of oversight with the NCAA. But the article talks about the lack of oversight in terms of strength and conditioning coaches, which has become the second most important person on any college football roster, according to the Real Sports report, and the lack of accreditation that these guys have, certification that they get, and the NCAA is trying to work on it. But we'll talk about it more tomorrow. But it's very, very interesting, and it's just another case where, after watching the show, in my opinion, that the NCAA again just totally lets down the student athlete. And it all came back to the same thing at the end when the people were asking why all this was happening, and the lawyers and the doctors were all saying the problem is that the athletes have no representation. They have no ability to unite. The NCAA takes that away from them. And again, it's back to the same thing with getting paid to play, profit sharing, now even protection of the players' health. The players are not given the right to speak as one voice against the NCAA. And it's so much easier for the NCAA to conquer the players, the athletes, without that cohesiveness that the players are allowed to form. Somewhere down the road, and you're going to find us when we talk about it, when you watch the real sports thing, somebody's going to step up and get the college athletes to unite and to be able to go at the NCAA with one voice and say, we want this, we want it implemented right now, or we just don't play. And then the cash cow dries up real quick. It will happen eventually. And this to me was a real eye-opener because I just caught it on a whim. I'm not usually a Bryant Gumbel fan, but I wanted to see this piece, and it's very eye-opening as to how lack of oversight there is and how much apathy there is by the NCAA in providing guidance and oversight for the strength and conditioning. It's primarily the football programs, but I'm sure it applies to all sports. I mean, I know the basketball programs now have strength and conditioning coaches as well. I mean, look at the money that people are putting into their workout facilities, their athletic facilities. Every university, the biggest chunk of change they're putting in their athletic department right now is to improve and build up a bigger workout facility or strength and conditioning.
But,
Indiana's done it. Indiana's huge.
Well,
so
in the end, the NCAA just sucks. They're just a big corporation making money off teenage kids, basically.
The sad part about it is, and whether they suck or not, the scary part is every time you turn over another stone, another red flag comes up, and that's the sad part. And how many red flags are we going to let turn up? And now when you're talking about athletes not just well-being anymore by not being able to share in the profits that are being generated through college athletics, but now you're talking about their health and their lives. I think again, it's a monster that's gotten too big for itself and needs to be reeled in some way. So we'll talk about that tomorrow.
We will definitely talk about that tomorrow, and then of course Friday we'll do a little preview of Week 4 of the NFL season, or what I like to call "Don't touch the quarterback."
Flag football.
Yeah, tonight, Wednesday night, 8 o'clock Eastern, we will have Episode 3 of Indiana Basketball Weekly with myself, Steve Risley, Colin Hartman. We'll talk a little bit more about what goes on with the Hoosier hysteria that starts off this weekend. And tonight at 9:30, CFL Weekly Show with myself, Brian Schmidt, and Robert Drummond, 4-time Grey Cup champion. We'll look at all the upcoming Week 16, 17 games, so you want to make sure you check that out also. So until tomorrow at noon, I am Mike Goodpaster, and Steve is Steve Risley. And you've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.